I heard you say at one point in time that you were in a Sunday school class and someone spoke about being angry with God. And while that wasn't directly part of your own experience, that person's comment has had a big impact on you. So go back and tell us the story.
Okay. I'll start back to growing up in a Mennonite home, and I'm so thankful for the Christian heritage that my mom and dad and relatives gave me. But during my 20s, I was not walking that closely with God at the time, to the point that if I would hear any kind of Bible story, it's like, well, I've heard that one before. I know that one. Don't need to read that one again. But I was attending church, and I was in a Sunday school class, and there was a woman whose name was Esther. They had just moved to our church, and she and her husband were both retired, and this was a new place for them, and they were going to be like associate pastor. Well, shortly after they arrived, her husband died, and it was an extremely difficult time for Esther. And while I was in this adult Sunday school class, I can remember it as clear as yesterday, Esther standing there and saying, I am so angry at God. I wake up in the middle of the night and I shake my fist toward heaven and say, God, why did you take my husband? And that was a changing point in my spiritual life. The fact that we as humans can be so bold as to express every sentiment, every feeling that we have with God, and he still loves us no matter what our frustrations are. It was just a turning point for me in my spiritual life. I'm not a person usually to get mad. That's not usually a high emotion for me. I'm more of the whimpering kind when I get upset about something. But just the fact that you could have that close a relationship with God meant a lot to me.
How did that, you say it's a turning point. Talk about how things became different after that.
After that, I think it drew me closer to relying on God no matter what was going on at the time. At that time in my life, the way that people would know that you're a Christian is if you were smiling all the time. And sometimes it's hard to smile all the time and to be honest with emotions. And the fact that I could go to God for anything, be it praise or be it frustration or anger, that was available to me. It just made for a much more honest and real relationship, which is what I value today in my people relationships. I value it when people can be honest about their emotions.
You value it when they shake their fist at you and say they're mad at you?
Well, they're not stifling. And I've learned that stifling is very bad.
That doesn't help. No. It is nice to know that God's shoulders are broad enough and that God isn't going to take us so seriously. I mean, God takes us very seriously enough that Jesus would come and die for us and become fully human, but at the same time, God isn't going to be personally injured by our outrage, our anger, our blaming God, sometimes with no good reason. Though sometimes there might be some good reasons. But at any rate, God's shoulders are broad enough to hear all of that.
Mm-hmm. I also, this isn't directly relevant to that, but I just love so much I don't know where it's located in the Bible, but the verse that says, how do you read it? Because that's been another spiritual awakening for me, in that, I told you in my 20s, I just felt like, oh, I heard that story. I'm done with that one. I know that one. And the fact that you can, depending where you are at that period of time in your life, the same verse can mean so many different things to you when you're 20, when you're 30, when you're 65.
Yeah. So the where is Luke chapter 10, because I have this piece of software that allows me to look it up really
Oh,
fast.
that's good.
It's not
I
that
thought that was coming off the top of your head, JP.
Oh yeah, I know. It's, I have the whole book memorized, but that would be wonderful. But this lawyer comes to Jesus and says, what do I need to do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says, well, what's written in the book? How do you read it? And I love that, Jesus invites the guy to reflect on what is there for himself before Jesus gives his own, authoritative answer. I love that.
Yeah, I love it. It's so nice, the Tuesday night group, and what Liz was saying last night about, that God chose two very unlikely candidates to bear children. Mary, because she wasn't married yet, and Elizabeth,
Yes.
because she was old
and barren.
Yeah, and never looked at that verse that way before.
Yeah.
Nice to hear how different people read it.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Wow. So in our conversation, going back to the first thing, you said that, anger is not really a thing for you in the way you process your emotions so much. How do you come to God when you're hurting, when you're frustrated? What does that look like for you?
This is where I think age speaks, because I think the older I am, the more I see how God has worked in previous situations.
Okay.
And how he comes up with answers totally different that I would have never thought of for situations.
Okay.
So that when I pray, I don't have to hand him the answer key. So I would say, knowing from the past how God has answered my prayers.
Uh-huh. Okay. It is nice to have that history.
Mm-hmm.
It does, I think, strengthen our trust. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sherri.
You're welcome.
A wonderful conversation.